Hello, everyone. This is Dan Gramza, and welcome to dangramza.com Market Studies for Monday, January 12th. Well, interesting day. We had interesting labor numbers coming out. Oh, by the way, if you're not familiar with this video, you're looking at a daily chart in a candle format with the concept of a swing trade. That means you're trying to capture a bit of the movement as the market ebbs and flows. And you can go to dangramza.com and look at how these lines have changed over time. Go back actually 10 years or so, and you can see the differences between these lines. And these lines represent red line, sell, green line, buy. A dashed line like this means that's something that happened earlier in the week. And to give you a reference, the dollar difference from this buy level to that sell level is $2,150 a contract. I do look for follow through to the upside in that market. That's the S&P 500. Same thing with the NASDAQ. Inside the slightly higher movement, dollar difference buy to sell level in that market is $1,160 a contract. So buyers are here, but can they follow through? And we're going to find out in the first couple days next week. In the Dow, which behaves differently because it is a different index, it doesn't have, for example, the technology weighting that you'll see in the NASDAQ, which has about 48% weighting towards tech stocks. A dollar difference buy to sell level here in that market is $4,040 a contract. Be careful here. This is not a really strong setup, but the bias is still for a move to the upside. And we're seeing that here in the Russell, those small to mid cap stocks. It's losing momentum, so Monday and Tuesday are going to be important for continuation in that market. The euro dollar difference here between the buy and sell level in that market is $125 a contract. And what are we seeing here? The US dollar is stronger. We're approaching levels, though, that these currencies have slowed down before. Look at the Swissy as it continues its march to the downside. And Mr. Yen, dollar difference, sell to buy level there is $1,025 a contract. Also, be careful here because it is at levels that buyers have entered that market before. Check out the Aussie dollar. In this market, dollar difference buy to sell level there, $350 a contract. I want to point out too, in this market, it's bouncy on the low where we found buyers before. So be careful here on the short side. Let's take a look at what's happening to the British pound. Dollar difference there in that market is $112.50. Also bouncy on the low, but sellers have been still in control in that market. Canadian dollar, look at that one, continues selling, and I look for that to continue as well. However, we're at levels we found buyers. This would be a good zone for an equal and opposite. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin traded above its buy level on Friday. That dollar difference in that market's $1,775 a contract. Oh, the difference here between that buy and that sell level is $19,075 a contract. Now, here's what I want to point out to you. It traded above that buy level. If we were a buyer here, it failed as it broke to the downside. So that's why for any time you initiate a trade, you always want you have your risk parameter in play. And here, the buy side failed in that market. But let's take a look at the 10-year note. Here's another one. It traded above its buy level, and it failed as it broke to the downside. A dollar difference here in that market, $125 a contract. But what about bonds? Very similar. Bouncy on the lows. Buyers are here, but can they follow through dollar difference here is $93.75 in that market. The level before here, that buy to sell level, $312.50 for that market. But bouncing on the lows, look for an inside day in that market. And if we take a look at what's going on with gold, still a lot of geopolitical things going on for that market. A dollar difference here between the buy and sell level here to that sell level is $7,600 a contract. And what are we seeing here? Well, buyers are here. That's not a confident close. Look for an inside day in that market. Bias is still for a move to the upside. We see that here in silver as well. Difference between the buy and sell level in that market is $11,850 a contract. The difference between the sell level down to that buy level, that's $6,200 a contract. Further movement, yes, but be careful here. Next 3 days are so important for that market. Now, what about copper? Copper's trying to firm up. The dollar difference here, $4,250 a contract. Fundamental support, though, I don't think is that strong. Crude oil pushing up a little bit. Be careful here about crude. People said with Venezuela, crude's going to go crazy. Well, not really. If you think about where does Venezuela fit in? Well, it produces about 800,000 barrels a day. It's less than 1% of global supply. So at this point, does it have a big impact on global supply? No. And we saw a meeting that Trump had in Washington, D.C. on Friday with all these oil companies, domestic and international, to talk about what's needed to move forward for the people of Venezuela, for the United States, and for the oil companies themselves. What will be needed and how do we move forward? So it'll be interesting to see what comes out. But keep in mind, that is not going to turn over. That's an infrastructure that was at 3.5 million barrels a day when it was at its peak in the late 90s, actually. So be patient when it comes to Venezuela. And right now, I'm looking for a sideways move in that market. But nat gas, we have a lot of it, and there's a lot of supply out there. So the difference between that supply and buy level in that market is $3,400 a contract. Now, what about the grains? Look for a sideways move here. Hey, soybeans. Well, China's buying some of our soybeans as they committed to. How about that? The differences between the buy and sell level in that market is $400 a contract. I don't look for a dramatic move up, and I feel the same way about corn. The bias is for a move higher. I just don't think there's a lot of support for it. Difference between the sell and buy level there is $400 a contract in that market. And what about wheat? We got a lot of it, and we're seeing that from a global point of view. Sideways move is what we're looking for. That's a neutral zone trade. Dollar difference buy to sell level, $300 a contract. Well, those are my thoughts for today. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to being with you again. And as always, take care.